I'm Shawna Rosner, your host of In-House Counsel Chronicles. I'm excited to introduce to you today my guest, Steve Eisenberg. Steve is General Counsel at Fullscript. He received his BS from Miami University, his law degree from Cleveland State University School of Law, and an LLM in healthcare from DePaul University College of Law. Steve spent 16 years of his career working as in private practice, and then the last 12 years in-house. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to start by asking you what led you to make the shift from practicing law as an equity partner in big law to becoming an in-house lawyer?
Yeah, that's a great question. At that time, I was really fortunate in private practice. I built up a really nice client base, but I was traveling a lot. And at that point in my career, I was fortunate that I got to do a lot of things closely with clients, like on a lot of strategic projects. And I really enjoyed seeing those projects through to the finish. But then there was always kind of the next step in terms of that, in terms of building a business. And so I started to think about what would it be like to be in-house, and then happen to have an opportunity that was literally in my backyard, basically one town away, of a company that was looking to kind of really building and hiring their first general counsel, and that sounded intriguing to me and had a really skilled leadership team, and I just said, let's take a chance. You could always go back into private practice if you wanted to. So.
And that was where you started?
I was at Baker Hostetler, and then I went to a company called AssuraMed that then got purchased by Cardinal Health, and it became Cardinal Health at Home.
So when you started with AssuraMed, you were the first in-house counsel they ever had. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it was a private equity-backed business that had brought in a new CEO who, through other people I had known by reputation, and it had a really good leadership team, and the individual who served as president and chief financial officer was also managing a lot of the outside counsel work and the legal work, and he was another big reason that I came to join the organization, because while I was the first general counsel, I didn't walk into chaos. Like sometimes you could, if there's nobody there, you could walk into a chaotic situation. I was super fortunate that was not what I was getting into there.
When you started, was there anything about practicing in-house as opposed to private practice that you weren't prepared for?
There's always surprises. Like I was lucky because in private practice, as I mentioned, like when a year as an associate, I was alone. Almost 2 years, I was a loaned associate, where I was 3 days a week in-house with the large health system, meeting with the general counsel, meeting with the deputy general counsel, really kind of it was a nice kind of way to test, would you like, in-house, and kind of seeing what that environment's like. Going in as general counsel, there are definitely things that catch you by surprise. I mean, you need to be very cognizant of how you're perceived by the rest of your leadership team and kind of your role within that. You got to moderate in terms of when you want to offer opinions. Do you really have the, I would say, like, permission to play? Why is my opinion valuable in this setting? And I think the other thing you just always need to be mindful of in-house is you're on the expense side of the ledger. And so how are you providing value every day? And then also, how are you demonstrating that value is being provided to the business? Because as lawyers, it's inherent, well, of course, we're providing this great advice. Look how important it is. Well, how do you translate that to others, either on the leadership team or within the company, especially when you get around budget time, to say, this is why this is valuable, this is why it's important, and here's basically the return we're getting on it. And it's not just legal, human resources, finance, other areas within a business are on the expense side, and you need to be able to justify, look, this is why it's important and this is why we're providing value to the business.
Makes sense. Understood. Okay, thanks for shedding light on that. And I'm curious how you came to specialize in the healthcare space.
Yeah, it's so when I was in law school, I took a couple classes taught by an adjunct professor, Susan Scheitzow, who was awesome and was a mentor of mine for a lot of years. And I just loved healthcare. I thought it was really interesting. I mean, it's really an end-to-end practice of law, meaning it covers employment, it covers labor, it covers business, it covers commercial, it covers litigation, but within an industry, and it happens to be an industry that's the biggest in the country in 25%. So that was one reason. You could be kind of a generalist within a huge area, and I really enjoyed that. And then just something about the mission of healthcare. It's always been interesting to me to be able to see this is what a product of my work led to this. So when I was in private practice, I was involved in the setup of 3 new hospitals and different centers of excellence. And that was really amazing to me in terms of what can be delivered to I guess the greater good, to the community. When I went to AssureMed, the idea that we distributed disposable medical supplies, catheters, diabetic test supplies, not what you would consider sexy, but then when you listen to the phone calls from patients that need these supplies, you're like, oh my, this is why I do it. You do it for that mission, and that's led through where I am now at Fullscript. And Fullscript is a company that really is a leader in empowering practitioners to develop and deliver whole person care to individuals. And when you look at the healthcare system, and I've been fortunate, Shawna, you scared me because you described how long I've been in practice. So maybe you realize how long I've been in the healthcare space. But you have an appreciation for kind of the changes that have taken place. And now we're much more in a place where I think moving to a space of more personal accountability for healthcare, partnering on not just how do I treat disease, but how do I stay healthier when I'm younger and then as I age through, because we want to eliminate and reduce chronic disease. And a lot of that is figuring out how to stay healthier and the steps that we can take to reduce the likelihood of that. And that's, kind of where I am now, and that's, Fullscript, that's our number one mission.
Great. Yeah, I can see where the mission of healthcare would be really resonate with someone.
I think you gotta you gotta have a reason beyond just a paycheck for, okay, this is what I do, why I'm doing what I do. I mean, you gotta get lucky sometimes too, in terms of finding that. And there's a lot of different places outside of healthcare to be able to find it. But I think it's really, for a lot of people, it's important to have that kind of intangible reasons and motivations for doing what they do.
And so you've worked a little bit in a publicly traded company and in private equity. Tell me a little bit about the differences you've seen there.
Yeah.
Working in-house.
I've been at 3 companies when I've been in private practice, and all started out as private equity owned. Those are all businesses. Generally, every business wants to grow, so but they're growing in a very different way. I mean, I have learned about myself that I really like mid-stage growth businesses that are looking to really take that next step in terms of growth and infrastructure building and continuing. They're all great companies. I mean, they've been built to a certain level, and they wanted to take that next step and being able to understand how to use the business term, scale the company. How do you get from 500 million to a billion to 2 billion? Because they're very different skill sets in that and very different needs in that. The first company that I was at, AssureMed, got purchased by Cardinal Health, and so I went from private to publicly traded company. So I didn't grow up in a publicly traded company or didn't look to join it. Publicly traded companies have a lot more procedure and process because they have to. They have different regulatory reporting requirements, quarter-to-quarter requirements, disclosure requirements that private companies don't have. And so the infrastructure you need to be a publicly traded company is much greater than a private company. That to me is the biggest difference between the two, because you do have a lot of small and mid-sized publicly traded companies. Cardinal is a really large publicly traded company. The one common thread is, look, there's really great lawyers and great people in both types of organizations. I think the publicly traded, it was just bigger, much bigger scale. At least my experience was.
So you've made a few moves in-house. Tell me about how you made those as exits and why you kind of made the changes you did when you did.
At the AssureMed to Cardinal, I realized, and it was kind of getting to know yourself, and I think all as we evolve through our careers, we learn more about ourselves in terms of what we want and what we don't want. And the AssureMed to Cardinal, I had opportunities to do different things within Cardinal, but I kind of reached, a ceiling unless I wanted to make substantial life moves, which at the stage that I was at, I really wasn't, ready to make those. And I also realized that I'm more of a builder. Like I like building, and nothing against Cardinal. I just didn't have the ability. You're in that large of an organization, your ability to influence is just more limited. And so, as my wife put it, she gives really good pieces of advice. She's like, you're not like good at being a box in a sea of boxes, no matter how important that box is. You're not great at that, and totally spot on. And so so that exit kind of, it when you see it. And so like that, it was like, okay, I had an opportunity to then join a company that ran emergency rooms around the country, and they just had a private equity investment and were looking to really build and partner with physician groups around the country. It's kind of my wheelhouse in terms of things that I'd done from a mission standpoint. We grew the company from seeing basically somebody walking through the doors of the hospital treating, I think it was one patient every 4 seconds, which was just mind-boggling to me. But also like to be able to support the clinicians that do that and don't know what's walking through that door, where generally I know on my schedule what I'm doing, was just really meaningful to me. And we were able to build that company, tremendous growth over the 8 years that I was there. And there I actually moved into more of a chief administrative officer role, and so ran some other things within the organization. But after 8 years, kind of just said, I think it's time to do something different, and I wanted to play in a different area of healthcare if that was available to me, and so kind of that exit just felt natural to me. There wasn't necessarily like a for better or for worse, a precipitating event to say, okay, like you have to move on. I've been lucky that it's really been at my choice to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And thanks for sharing that journey. Since becoming in-house counsel, what changes have you seen, if any, and how in-house counsel interacts with outside counsel? As
I look to build like in-house counsel and the skills that I've looked for, and then I will answer the question, is like, what are the core competencies inside that we have to be able to do every day? Like, that's the most important, because I can't and don't want to outsource that. It's just not, in working with outside counsel, it's not cost effective. I don't think it's good for the business leaders. I don't think you necessarily get continuity of advice. So for me, like, what are the things that will take up 75% of our time, and then make sure I assemble a team that's around that and a skill set around that. And then from there, in terms of partnering with outside counsel, I look to identify lawyers and teams of lawyers, and not necessarily firms. There may be crossover in that, but when I came out in 2012, it was still a lot more like memos, things like that. Now it's much more pragmatic. I think things move just at a faster pace, and you really look for attorneys who, in private practice, who can answer the question, if I were in your shoes, this is what I would do. Because that's what you want them to be. You want them to be an extension of you in terms of, now that's also incumbent on in-house counsel to be able to, and for me, in terms of firms I partner with, they have to understand like where my risk tolerance is. Because it's not fair to somebody who is more of a episodic engagement and ask them something that could have broad risk to say, what would you do if you were me? Well, I'm not in your environment, so that's not a fair question. So you got to be fair with them, but I think identifying counsel, one who will get to know your business and then be very kind of, for me, pragmatic, I think are things that I've really pushed.
And you touched a little bit about your team, and you've had different teams and you've built different teams in the different places where you've been. How have you developed a leadership style as in-house counsel?
Yeah, so my style is very hands-off. Like I don't get involved in the day-to-day of what everybody on my team is doing. I don't think you can, again, to go to the business term, you can't operate at scale if you're the one doing everything, and you got to push your people. And by the way, when I come in, there's been businesses that I've come into, the people that were there that were on the team before I joined know a heck of a lot more about the law, the space than I do. I was brought in, for leadership and other skill sets sometimes than necessarily, for me, like where I am now at Fullscript, like there's a lawyer who was there who I actually interviewed with when I was interviewing for the general counsel role, and really smart individual, knows the dietary supplement space, has learned the FTC and laboratory space that we play in, but hadn't been a general counsel and wanted somebody who could help show them how to build and grow with that. And so for me, in terms of teams, like seeing him and how do I empower him, and it's really not getting involved in his day-to-day. And I've done that across teams that I've built. What I do is say, what are the three, we align on what are the three most important things that each person needs to accomplish over the week, the month, the 6 months, period. And then they tell me like how they want to get there. And I'll give them feedback and I'll answer questions and be there and support them. But for me, it's really about how do I empower them and clear the path to be able to achieve the objective. The other thing in terms of kind of hands off, and for me, I put my team directly in touch like with their clients. Like I make sure, for us in like category management or our suppliers, like there's one person who works with a lot of the supplier contracts. I don't get involved in the middle of that stuff. Yes, he lets me know week to week what he's working on, but I don't get involved in any of the contracts. I say, look, you need to be part of that leadership team so you know what's coming down the pike and you can plan your schedule accordingly. If you run into conflicts, because we are supporting multiple units within the business, then we figure that out. But otherwise, like you manage that because it's your business. And I think similar to how I was talking about outside counsel, there's just much better continuity built with the business if they have the same person in there.
Okay, great. I want to shift a little bit to something that I often hear. I'm talking to attorneys every day, and a lot of them want to make a move in-house, kind of like you did, at different stages of their career. Some are younger in their career and they want to do that. Some are have more experience. And a common phrase that I hear when I ask why they are interested in going in-house is that they're looking for better work-life balance. What do you have to say about that?
Keep looking. No, no. It's just different. So I'm not a proponent. I don't like the phrase work-life balance. And it's because like you got to figure out like what you love to do. And a lot of people love like you better love some parts of work or it's really going to be a slog for your career. But then you kind of gravitate to what engages you in anything in life, whether it's family, whether it's hobbies, whether it's friends, or whether it's work. And then kind of within that, you find your own balance. Like within work, like, you know, I'm secretly, quietly competitive. You know, like winning is really important to me. It's not at all costs, but it's fun. Like if I could choose between winning and losing, I'd rather win. And that's very, you know, I enjoy that. And so I think you're looking for like work-life balance. Like when I went in-house, I work differently. I don't really think I work less, but I work differently. You're still on call like 24 hours a day. Like it does, you know, if that's the nature of your role. Like you're the attorney and people generally call you. They don't call you to say, hey, everything's going great today, Steve. Just wanted to let you know. Like that doesn't happen.
Right.
It's, hey, I have a problem. I got a call at 4 o'clock on New Year's Eve saying, hey, we have a crisis. This is what you need to do. Well, what was I going to say? Like, I'm off? Sorry, this is my off time? Like, it's not the way it works. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. So it's not necessarily better work-life balance. I do think you can anticipate things better than you can in private practice because you're embedded within the business. And so you know the rhythm of the business and you know when things will come up. But there are times where you just have to be on. I think really for people who are thinking about that move in-house, I think kind of taking a step back and saying what really engages you work-wise. Like whether it's the type of work you're doing, whether it's like for me, when I described before, wanting to be part of building something bigger. You know, and in law firms, you can do that and firms can do that. And I think lawyers should look at their own practice and say, how do I build my own practice within the infrastructure of a firm within that? So you can do that. But I enjoy doing it much more kind of in a team approach and with a group of aligned individuals and then kind of shared success in that. That's super motivating to me. And understanding those motivations is really important. It can't just be, I want to work a little less or I want to work differently. Because I don't think there's that many of those opportunities in-house.
I really appreciate you sharing that insight. And I think it's applicable, as you kind of mentioned, to any career that you're in. So thank you.
I mean, at the end of the day, like you have to be able to show that you can at least outwork or work as much as people, and it can be working efficiently or things like that. But that has to be present in order for you to succeed or be recognized. Because I will say, like, if you went in-house and then, you know, said, look, I really want to limit how much I work or things like that, you could do that. But you're also, just like in private practice, you're not going to get, like, the most engaging, necessarily, responsibilities. And then you're going to say, gosh, that's really what I want now. So that's why, I mean, really self-examining what do I want is really important.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and I know I could spend even more time talking about this topic. It's something that's really of interest to me, and I've seen a lot of changes over the course of my career surrounding the phrase, you know, work-life balance, which really didn't exist, I think, when we started practicing.
Yeah.
So, is there anything from your career thus far that you could say you're most proud of?
Really, I'm most proud of kind of the teams that I built and the engagement with, you know, on those teams and with kind of colleagues and especially people who I've identified or been able to mentor who have achieved just really awesome things. I mean, you know, and sometimes needed the confidence, sometimes needed a little bit of mentorship. I mean, it really has been a little bit of kind of pay it forward, as they say, and that's been really important to me. You know, that's the most meaningful piece to me. And then, you know, I mean, while all this has gone on, I've been lucky that I've had a super supportive wife and family, and we never killed each other through this time. And I think actually we're closer because at the end of the day, like work can be really stressful, and it's stressful on the home front and things like that. And so how do you manage and work through all of that? And I'm really proud of that. Those relationships are really strong through that.
And I know you've also saved some of your time to do things outside of work. I know you volunteer. Anything you can share about that and how it's like impacted you in your career?
I've always kind of given back. It's always been really important. When I was a young person, people were really generous to me in terms of their time and helping mentor me. My parents were divorced and kind of getting involved in that. And so there's a few organizations that I've been involved with for a long time. And I always just say, like, what do you need me to do? Like, I'm happy to fill whatever role, and I've done a lot of neat things. And through that, you meet like some really interesting people, personally, professionally. I mean, it's just fun. Like you really enjoy it. It's one of those kind of more mission type things that you kind of look back on, and you realize like these organizations, like they need talent. They need money. I know you're wrong. You're always fundraising, but they really need people who will help kind of think through things with them and partner with the leadership. And I just really enjoy that. And as much as I've given them, they've given back to me in terms of experiences and people and things like that. Not that it has to be reciprocal, but it has been.
That's really great. And I'm sure people have really benefited from your mentorship, both professionally and voluntarily, and your help there. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Are there any legal trends that you're seeing now that affect how you practice? I know like in the healthcare space that you're in, things seem like they're constantly changing. What do you have to share there?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think the AI trend is going to impact the delivery of legal services tremendously. I can't tell you exactly how. I mean, the company Fullscript is essentially a technology company. I mean, I work for a tech company that is in healthcare and empowering practitioners to deliver whole person care. And there's a big push in terms of how do we use artificial intelligence across our business and different things for efficiency, productivity. And for me, like I always say, like, how do we eliminate the busy work from our day? Like, let's use technology to eliminate the busy work. And so I'll just give an example. We're considering an RFP for certain advocacy services. And so I kind of worked with somebody inside who's basically taught me how to develop prompts in ChatGPT to really be able to produce better content and better questions. And essentially I got a first draft, and a pretty good first draft, of an RFP for advocacy services in terms of describing. That would have taken like somebody 4 to 8 hours searching the web and forums and things like that. It took like 20 minutes to be able to do that. And so I think you're going to continue to see that. I mean, I've asked my team to look at process differences, to look at initial reviews of contracts, especially lower level contracts. Can we run them through AI to be able to say, okay, identify these 5 points, contract summaries. It's really good at that stuff if you teach the model in terms of how you want it to work. And I'm not even like that great at it. Like there are people in our business that are great at it, and I'm amazed at some of the stuff that they produce. And I think that's going to have a profound effect. But in yes, it can be a threat in some ways, but in other ways, it's like I always tell people, I go, how do I get you so you are practicing at the highest ability or level that you can practice at? And that's eliminating a lot of the BS busy work. Like, how can I save 5 or 10 hours out of your day so you're doing stuff that's like engaging and frankly more meaningful to the business? And that's where I think you're going to continue to see technology changes that really open that up. It's fun to watch. It's scary, but it's fun to watch.
Yeah, I'm really interested to seeing where this goes with AI and especially in the legal space. So remains to be seen. As we close the session today, I'm hoping you can share with our listeners advice that you have for anyone aspiring to be in-house counsel.
Yeah. So I go back to kind of like knowing, I mean, I presume you're coming from private practice, kind of knowing and identifying what you want out of practice and out of your career in terms of going in-house. I think identifying a couple mentors for people who have done that so they can help work you through some of the decisions and what help you prioritize what's important to you and what you can influence and what you can't, I think is really important. I mean, I was fortunate in terms of having good mentors. And then I think as you look at opportunities in-house, really digging deep on those opportunities. Who are the people that you would work with on a day-to-day basis? Knowing people who are at that company and talking to people, what's it like to work there? What's it like to be there? Because there may be things that from a business side, you're like, wow, that sounds really awesome. And then you find out like, okay, the 3 leaders have been at, 10 companies in 10 years and there's a lot of transition. Well, typically if you're going from private practice is pretty stable as much as we think that there are, then there are ups and downs, but it's fairly stable to then go into a company where companies make decisions quarter to quarter or every 6 months, where law firms generally don't do that. And so you're walking into a different environment. So how do you control for that environment? I thought when I went in-house, I approached it just like I was making an investment, because it is totally an investment in your career. And what are the things that would be important to me if I were going to invest in this long term? And that's the way I approach it. And that's what I would suggest to anybody looking at it, knowing yourself, what do you want? And then is it the right opportunity to help fulfill that?
I think that's great advice and a great way to end the podcast. Thank you for joining me in In-House Counsel Chronicles. It's really been a great discussion.
Thanks so much for having me. Good luck with the podcast.
Thank you.